Texas endorses Don Huffines for governor. Huffines will protect our children.
Political ad paid for by conservative Republicans of Texas.
I'm Dr. Steve Hosey. In 2020, Governor Abbott acted like a tin-pot dictator and issued illegal executive orders that closed businesses, causing them to go bankrupt. Millions lost their jobs. Abbott banned church services, closed schools, and issued worthless mask mandates. He violated our rights. Conservative Republicans of Texas endorses Don Huffines for governor. Huffines will protect our God-given freedoms.
Political ad paid for by conservative Republicans of Texas.
All right, thank you. Dr. Hosey, the mic is yours, sir.
Everybody stand up. Everybody up. This is a routine we do at our center, Coaching Health and Wellness Center. Let me ask you 4 questions. Are you alive?
Yes.
I'm alive.
I'm alive. I'm alive.
Are you awake?
I'm awake.
Are you alert?
I'm alert.
Are you enthusiastic?
Yes. I'm enthusiastic.
Great. Have a seat. It's my pleasure today to introduce the next governor of the great state of Texas, Don Huffines. Don Huffines is a Dallasite. He grew up there, 5th generation Texan. His family was in the car business. When he got out of college, he and his brother set up a commercial real estate business, and they own commercial real estate all over the greater Dallas metroplex. He's been very successful. He's not a career politician, although he was elected twice to be state senator in Dallas, from Dallas to the Texas legislature, where he was strong pro-family, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment. He was a fiscal conservative across the board. He was just an outstanding conservative leader. He bucked heads with many of the people that you think are conservative, like our lieutenant governor, who everybody thinks is a real conservative. But I know him personally, and I know him to be a flim-flam man, and Don was willing to take him on, head up, and I appreciate that about somebody that will take on the political leaders. He's willing to take on the governor of the state of Texas, who I have said is a tin-pot dictator. He had no right or authority to shut down our businesses, to close our churches, to lock down our schools. He had no authority to do that. All that is the authority given to us by the Constitution of the state of Texas for the legislature to do. But he did it on his own, and many people just rolled over and said, whatever the dictator wants to do, we're going to do. But thank God, men like Don Huffines were willing to challenge him, and I filed a lawsuit against the governor of the state of Texas, and Don Huffines was a fellow plaintiff, along with Sid Miller and several other of the statewide leaders, to challenge Abbott's dictatorial activities. I think he's much like a robber. He comes and robs your house, and then comes back a week or 2 later and gives you a little bit of the money that he stole from you. How did he do that? Oh, we couldn't have church. Oh, later he said, I'm going to open up your churches. Oh, these are great guys letting us go back to church. You have to have masks on all the time. And then I said for the last 2 years, that's the craziest thing in the world. It's dangerous, it causes hypoxemia, it causes you to rebreathe all your own toxins, and it doesn't stop the virus from going out. It doesn't protect you at all. And I said this should not be done. It's wrong to put kids in it. It's satanic because God has given us features, and he's given us personalities, and you can't see it when you put a mask on. Every satanic cult uses masks, and that's what they're trying to do, is dehumanize Americans, and Christians in particular, and it's wrong. And I told Abbott he was wrong, and finally he came and said, okay, you can take off your mask, and everybody said, what a wonderful governor we have. He let us take off our masks. We should have never let him put them on to begin with. Anyway, that's how I feel about Abbott, and I was so glad, and I encourage Don Huffines to make this race for governor, because we need somebody that's going to protect our God-given liberties, our rights, and our freedoms, and that's Don Huffines. Don, please come up right now.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Joseph, for having me here. Well, hello, Patriots.
Good morning.
Hello, Patriots. Y'all ready to fight for liberty today?
Yes.
Great. It's a great day to fight for liberty. The good news is We can do it all day and all day tomorrow. It really is. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, a little more than what Dr. Holtze said. I'm going to tell you about my experience in Austin, Texas, when I was in the Senate, because you need to understand what really goes on in the political world, because I did not understand it until I did it, and it's valuable information for you. And I'm going to tell you why I'm running and why I'm going to win. On the third Sunday of April of 21, after Easter, a 29-year-old lady and her husband and their 11-month-old went to church in Dallas, Texas. The church was still scared of the Wuhan, so they were meeting in the gymnasium. Chairs are, 8-10 feet apart, two together, and they sat in the far back right-hand corner so they wouldn't bother anybody. And she took her mask off. Well, the preacher, he walks by and he says, "You need to put that mask back on." She said, "I'm not going to do that." They had some words. She said, "I'm pregnant with number 2. I'm not feeling good." Well, the service goes on, and they go back to their 2 chairs towards the end of the service, and went up after they got communion. They're kneeling in front of the chairs praying. And she feels this heavy hand on her neck pulling on her. And she has the baby in her left arm, and she turns around and looks up, and there's 3 Dallas policemen standing above her. One of them's got the hand on the taser, and the other one's got the handcuffs out in the middle of the service and says they're going to jail because the preacher called the police because they weren't wearing a mask. Well, her husband's a calm fellow, like calmer than I'd be, and he started videoing it. And he talked him into taking it outside, and they wrote him up for trespassing outside. Wrote her up. And they took a picture of the license plate of the car and said, if that car ever comes back to the church again, they're all going to jail. Well, the video went viral. Over a million Americans have seen it. You might have seen it. And they were shocked. Shocked, as we all are, that this would happen in the middle of a church service. But what they were really shocked about is it happened in Texas. That this could happen in Texas. Well, that 28-year-old was my daughter, Deirdre. And I blame this on our governor. He's the one that's empowered the leftists that have taken over our churches and made a medical condition, or supposedly a medical condition, into a political condition. And an enabler, you know what an enabler is. An enabler gets the same penalty as those that commit the crime. If you drive the getaway car in Texas, you can get the same penalty as those that go inside the bank and rob it. Well, I'm Don Huffines, and I'm planning on being your next governor. I was, like he said, like Steve said, I was born in Dallas, Texas. I'm a 5th-generation Texan. I grew up in the Metroplex. I'm a lifelong conservative activist. I've always had a passion for liberty and freedom. And best thing that happened to me was 34 years ago. My beautiful wife, Mary Catherine, right back there. Wait, Mary. She's on the trail with me. We're having fun with it. We have 5 children, 4 boys and a girl, and we homeschooled our children to make sure they could grow up in a good conservative Christian environment, and they did. And I brag on my boys and all of them, but all 4 boys were Eagle Scouts. That was a great chapter in our lives, and I was a Scoutmaster, and it was great. And now we got 4 Longhorns and 1 horned frog out of that bunch. and we're new grandparents 4 times over. Deirdre's had that baby, and we're grandparents 4 times over in the last 21 months now. It's a new chapter of our lives. It's a great chapter. But I'll tell you that I'm also a business guy. I started my company in 1985. I forgot to tell you, I graduated from UT Austin with a finance degree in 1981. But I started my company in 1985, and it's a commercial real estate company. We develop apartments, new apartment complexes, and develop land. And so we do a lot of land, a lot of master plan communities. And in DFW around the state, we've done some things out of state. I really like real estate. It's a great, it's a great business. And I've been the boss and on it, so I understand it quite well. But I'm used to giving directions for people. But it's had its ups and downs. Look, it's a cyclical business. And I thought I'd tell you about that. But let me just rewind a little bit and tell you, when I was a teenager, I was always had this passion in me. I'm going to try to weave in a little business and my ideas on politics with it, and then my ideas of Jesus also. And when I was a teenager, I always had something burning in me that I think a lot of people have. And I call it the flame of liberty. It never goes out, but it's always there. And sometimes it just burns so bright you can't stand it. But you just know there's something else in life that's more important. And so I got active in Reagan's campaign and helped him in '76. I went to my first Republican Senate caucus meeting when I was 18, about 2 weeks. And I've been active in politics since, in the space of helping candidates and donating a lot of money. It was about that same time of my age that I really always had a hankering to make money and to be. I worked in my dad's business. My daddy was in the car business, new car business. I punched the clock back there since I was 13 years old, and I was the grease monkey and used car make ready, and I got all the cigarette butts out of it and everything like that. And I realized that just wasn't for me. So I never worked in the car business after that, after I was a teenager. But then when I got 16, 17, I decided it was the bicentennial year for the United States of America. And I told my brother, I said, everybody's going to buy a lot of fireworks this year. So I said, let's get in the fireworks business. Nobody knew anything about the fireworks business in my family. My family was not political, and they weren't particularly religious either. So I called the state of Texas to figure out how you could get a fireworks license. Figured it all out, and my brother and I, mainly me, we started selling fireworks for the bicentennial. Man, there's a big markup in fireworks. We did great. It was tremendous. We made like $3,000, $3,500, and I barely had my license to go get all the stuff. We got to wholesalers and we sold it. And so for the next 4 summers, we had more fireworks stands. We put them all over Denton County, and even did it when I was in college. It was a great way to make money in the summer, and I made a lot of money selling fireworks. But that gives you an idea that I always wanted to work for myself, and I was always knew that. I knew at a very young age I could never work for anybody else. It was just my personality, how it was. That's why I went into real estate and majored in that and started my own company. But my journey and I'll tell you, real estate, it's not always good. My paradigm is really from the 80s. Y'all remember the 80s when we had the big meltdown? Maybe y'all aren't old enough. But I did great. Everything was smoking hot in Texas in 83, 84, 85. It was just great. Then the crash hit. So that's the paradigm I live in, is that crash. And I learned not to sign a note personally. You can keep from it. So the only thing I had left in 87, 88, and 89 was my credit card. I had to move into a house that rent-free. Mary Catherine and I, we were recently married and had new babies, and it was a trying time. It really was. And had no income. For 2 years, I had 0 income. But I stayed with it. I persevered with it. My Rolodex, we call it Rolodex back there, went down 90%. The government owned everything. The government took back all the banks and the savings and loans. And the government owned all the real estate. Just about 80% of everything you saw was owned by the government. And so I decided I would always stay with the real estate. I just loved it, commercial real estate. And then the government said they're going to sell everything off. And so I said, I got to figure out how I can get in on all these auctions. Because they have auctions. They were selling everything in auctions. They'd go to a hotel, they had everywhere, all over the state of Texas. And so I didn't have any money. But I had my credit card left. and I had $25,000 I could get on that credit card, or 20, whatever it was. So I went, and that's what you had to have $5,000 to bid on these properties. So I used that credit card to go get some cashier's checks so we could bid on the real estate. And then the next 2 weeks after we'd win a bid, we'd flip it. Anyway, that started my career back, and we made a lot of money. I made a lot of money. It was just great. We made millions of dollars, and since then, but we've had a lot of trying times since then. But the path for me really started for my path with Jesus was when I married Mary Catherine, 34 years ago. And because, like I said, I didn't grow up real religious, but she was. And so we raised our children in a very religious environment, and we bring in the Holy Spirit all the time. And we give up everything to the Lord. That's why we're doing this campaign. That's what we're doing in our business. And we just let the Holy Spirit fill us with joy and happiness as much as we can. And we pray all the time, and the power of prayer is real, and it's you've got to believe in the supernatural. You've got to believe in the power of the Holy Spirit and the Lord Jesus himself. Well, I was tired of, have you ever met a Republican that didn't say he was conservative? Have you? No, I don't think so. Not in Texas. Well, I got tired of hearing all that. And I got tired of being misled. I got tired of the lies. So in 13, I ran, as Dr. Holtze said, and I knocked out an incumbent. Nobody thought it could be done, because it had never really been done in the state of Texas in 150 days or so, that somebody could knock out somebody who'd been in office 20 years for the state senate. He controlled Dallas County. He outspent me 2-1. He spent almost $6 million or more to win that Senate seat. He did, to beat me. And so I won. And I know what it's like to be outspent 2-1 or more. I know what it's like to be a massive underdog. But I also know what it's like to win. And that's what I'm going to do in this governor's race. I delivered on all of my campaign promises. And what are you trying to do when you're vetting a candidate? Generally what we're trying to do is determine, can you trust them? Are they just another liar, right? Are they going to just campaign one way and go down to Austin or Washington and govern a different way? Because that's what they all do. Well, I did it. I have the record to back my campaign up, my campaign promises, and I'm standing by my record. I told the voters I would be very conservative, even though I was in a very liberal district. I told the voters I would shut government down and root out government corruption. I told the voters that I would always be there of 100% of the attendance. I told them that I would fight for term limits and a lot of other things. And I did all that. I uncovered one of the largest political corruption scandals in modern Texas history. It was an obscure government agency in Dallas County. It was taxing everybody on their bills. And the scary part was it wasn't hard to uncover it. All I did was look at my property tax bill and ask, what is this at the very bottom? And it said Dallas Equal Fund. You have one here in Harris County. These were the two last county-wide school districts in the state of Texas. One was in Dallas County Schools, and you have one here in Harris County. Nobody could figure out what they really did. They provided some transportation to the ISDs, but they couldn't answer any of my questions. So I went and met with them. I'm a business guy, and I love the numbers. And they didn't. It was always obscure what they were really doing, and where they were getting their money. And so I had hearings in Austin for 3 years trying to figure it out. I got the Texas Rangers involved, and then we got the FBI involved. And bottom line is we got 6 people put in prison, including the deputy mayor, the city council of Dallas, serving 7 years for stealing tens of millions of dollars from Texas taxpayers, Dallas County taxpayers. Also got that agency closed down. I delivered on that promise. And this wasn't just merging an agency with another agency like Ghost Government is. We sold their computers off. I sold their real estate off. We sold everything off. And 3,000 employees, had over $100 million annual budget. This is the largest shutdown of a government agency in modern Texas history. According to the Secretary of the Senate, I'm the only elected office holder, maybe in Texas history, but certainly in modern history, that never took any money from the government. No pay, no pension, No health care, no reimbursements, no nothing. I didn't even use their office furniture. It was really ugly. But I say that because the government didn't hire me. There's nothing the matter with working for the government. But the government never hired me. The people hired me. I'm going to do the same thing as your governor. I'm never going to take a salary or pension or anything else in the government because I work for the people. Well, I'm going to pull the curtain back for you and let you understand what happens down there in Austin. Right after inauguration in 2015, the leadership called a meeting of the caucus as a whole. There's 31 state senators. When I was there, there's 20 Republicans and 11 Democrats. Now there's 18 Republicans. So we all, 31 of us, Democrats and Republicans, we meet in this little room the day after inauguration. And in comes leadership. This be Lieutenant Governor and his entourage. Come prancing into the room. Welcome, senators. Welcome to the most exclusive club in the state of Texas. There's less than 150 of you still alive. You're so lucky to be here. You don't know how important this is. You don't know how important you are. And you don't know how important your fellow senators are so important. You'll never do anything to hold them accountable. You'll never do anything to embarrass them. You're so fortunate to be in the Texas Senate. And they go off on this on and on. They keep going on how we're so smart in the Senate and you're never going to hold anyone else accountable in this room. And they start drilling that into you multiple times. And I'm sitting there thinking, I wonder if I'm the only guy in here who's wondering why they call legislators members. Have you ever wondered that? They don't wonder that. They know they're members of this exclusive club. And they are the elitists. I worked hard for my campaign promises, which are the Republican Party priorities. I was the first senator to file constitutional care. I worked hard to eliminate the margins tax, the franchise tax, and a lot of other issues. And you can't imagine how much they fought me. How the swamp is so deep in Austin, Texas. It's just as deep as the one in Washington. It might not be as wide, but it's ever been as deep. They want to control you. They is leadership. It's so difficult to stand up when everyone in the room is telling you to sit down. Why don't you just cooperate? Why don't you just be a team player? Why do you want to go off a different way? Why don't you just do what the leadership says to do? It takes real courage. There's a lot of people that, not a lot, I shouldn't say that, there's a few, very few people that vote right, that vote the way they say they're going to vote. But there isn't hardly anybody that's got the courage to fight. I was cussed at and screamed at on the floor of that Texas Senate more than I've ever been in my adult life. And it's mainly by Republicans. It wasn't by the Democrats. It was the Republicans, because the Democrats were honest brokers. We knew where they stood. They knew where I stood. We didn't agree on much of anything. But it was the Republicans that campaigned one way, and they go down to Austin, and they're going to govern a different way. They don't want to be accountable. It really wigs them out to be accountable. Well, the catalyst for me to run was in March of 20. We all know what happened. I put a Tweeter out warning everybody what Abbott was going to do when he listened to that line, Fauci. I mean, who would have believed this thing came from a bat suit? We boil our soup before you eat it. Anyway, there's a few things old Greg forgot about, and I'm not trying to be critical of him, but it's indicative of where we are in our society today and in Texas. And he forgot that our liberties come from God. Our liberties these are not privileges, these are rights we have. Our liberties come from God and not the government. And it's a classic liberalism idea that even today around the world, nobody really gets this. If you go to Europe today and you ask that question, where do your liberties come from? They're going to say, it comes from government. Government's the one that gives us that. It was an American original idea, of course, as you probably know, that's what makes America unique. Is that these are rights that we have. Our founders knew that, of course. That's why they wrote my favorite document right here. They wrote this document to specifically protect your God-given liberties. And they knew the biggest threat to your liberty was the very government they were creating. That's why we don't swear allegiance to a king or queen or president or the military. We swear allegiance to that document. They wrote this to restrain government. They knew that was the biggest threat. So, what is the fundamental role of government? Always ask a candidate running for office for this. I don't care what party they're in. And they need to be able to answer it. And if they can't, you need to inform them or you need to run away and get some other candidate support. It's always to defend your God-given liberties. That's the fundamental role of government. So another way of saying that is the fundamental role of government is for government to protect you from government. And that's the way to look at it. That's the lens I look through when old Greg Abbott shut everything down. Another thing to remember is that a patriot, a true patriot, never blindly follows government. A true patriot questions government. You don't just have the authority to question government, you have an obligation to question government. Why would you believe whatever the government tells you? Why? Why do we do that? We shouldn't. But old Greg did. He shredded our Constitution. He put tens of thousands of businesses out of business for generations, forever. 3 million Texans were without a job in 2 weeks and depended on the government because he listened to Fauci. And then, as Dr. Holtze said, he closed our churches. And he closed them on the holiest season of the year, Easter of 20. You couldn't bury the dead. You couldn't get married. You couldn't get baptized. You couldn't hold the hand of the dying. Every way this state responded was on him. In the history of Christianity, we've never closed our churches for 2,000 years. You don't close your churches because you're talking about possible salvation of souls. But he didn't care. He did it anyway. Keeps a mask mandate on us for 9 months. He said, people thank him for taking that off. That's like thanking a thief for bringing some of your stolen goods back. Well, of course I never would have done any of that. I never would have done it. The Constitution doesn't give me the authority to do that. It's not the lens I look through. I'm here for your medical freedom, your economic liberty, your personal liberty. I'm here to cut the chains of government. Look, if you want to get the vaccine 10 times, you can get it. But I will never allow a Texan to be forced to take a vaccine for any reason. I personally have never taken it and I never will. I would never require a Texan to be forced to wear a face diaper either, or your children, for any reason. Well, Greg and I just have a different way of seeing things. You know, I'm not going to sit up here and dish him all day, but he is a career politician, 30 years in elected office. He can't get enough of it. While he's been on the Texas taxpayer payroll for 30 years, I've been creating lots of jobs. He's just a political windsock. He just blows in the wind trying to figure out what to do, what not to do. I'm a business guy, which puts me at a real distinct advantage because I'm not looking for a new job. I'm not looking for a new career. I'm doing this and running because the job's not getting done. And it really is a freeing position to be in. I don't care about the political ramifications of the decisions I'm making. I'm here to solve the problems that affect Texans, all Texans. And we've got the solutions. I've got the experience and I've got the courage to implement those solutions. Let me just ask you something. Is the border secure?
No.
Are your property taxes going away?
No.
Do you have confidence in our elections? No. Are we winning the culture war?
No.
I could go all the way down the list, and the answer, of course, like you said, it's all no. Are you good with that? No, I don't think people are good with that. I don't think any Texan's good with those issues. These are nonpartisan issues. These are. I've got comprehensive solutions to every bit of that. Do you know why most candidates won't give you solutions to what they're running for? What do most candidates say? Come on. Oh, less government, less taxes, get government out of the way, go military or whatever. That's what most people say. You know why they say that? Because they can't be held accountable. How do you hold somebody accountable for that if that's their campaign promise? Well, I give you comprehensive solutions because I want to be accountable to you. Let's just talk about the border for a minute. I'll talk about these main issues, but first let me just say this to you guys. Most things in Texas are downstream of the governor's office. Virtue, our culture, our legislation, our budget. Virtue. Our founders knew that you couldn't ever experience true liberty unless you had a virtuous society. It starts at the top. It does. Well, let's just go back to the border. This is one reason we're losing our culture war. I was on the committee in Austin for border security, and I've been up and down the river in the gunboats. I've been in Black Hawk helicopters. I've been over the border multiple times. No country in the world would tolerate what Texas is tolerating right now. We're a state of 30 million people, and Border Patrol's telling me that up to 2 million unapprehended illegals have flooded into Texas in the last 12 months. 2 million. Even if that's an exaggeration, there's 1.5 million. Seriously? We don't know where they're from. We don't know their names. They've caught illegals on the river from 151 different countries. Afghanistan, Pakistan, China, Africa, all over the world. You'd almost give a prize to every country that didn't send somebody over here. I mean, you really would. Who would tolerate that? I was giving an interview to the Telegram newspaper in London, England, a bunch of liberals, which is fine, I don't care. And they started giving me heck. I said, you really serious? You think that England, of a country of 55 million people, would not freak out if 2 million people came into their nation and they don't even know who they are? Of course they're going to freak out. And they're all smuggled in by the most dangerous criminal organizations on earth. Period. The Mexican cartels. Sex trafficking. Houston's the #1 city for sex trafficking, and Dallas is #2. No one has crossed that river. No one. Illegally without paying the cartels, and that's been going on for years. When I was on the committee, they all boarded it for years. These people are so dangerous, so violent. You ought to see the videos that I see. It doesn't even make the news in Mexico when they drive through town killing dozens and dozens of people just for fun. They hunt people for fun. And they burn them. It's just amazing. One guy was testifying at the courthouse in Dallas, Texas on the Zetas. He said, when he got immunity, he said, I've murdered over 300 people and I quit counting. That's what we're dealing with on the Texas border right now. This is an invasion. Any way you define it, it's an invasion. What are we thinking? Where's the outrage? Really, fentanyl's 100,000 people have OD'd on fentanyl in the United States of America, or it's fentanyl related or other drugs related, mainly fentanyl, in 1 year. We lost 52,000 in Vietnam in 10, and in 1 year, we lost 100,000 Americans because that border's not secure. This is a premeditated attack on Texas. This is a premeditated attack on the United States of America. Patriots, the federal government's never going to secure that border. They never have, and they never will. Never. Republicans controlled everything in Washington when Trump was president, and the border was still open. The only chance we have of having a secure border is with a courageous government. The plan to secure the border has been up on my website since May. I'm, of course, going to finish Trump's wall, or a lot of it, about 300 miles of it. We'll spend the $4 billion or so necessary to get that done. We have to. It doesn't compare to the amount of money that we're spending for illegal immigration. I'm a business guy. I'll take that trade. But the most important thing I'm going to do to secure that border is I'm never asking permission from the federal government to secure the Texas border. It's not necessary, because my favorite document right here, our U.S. Constitution, clearly gives the governor of the state of Texas the authority to do what they want to do, they need to do to repel an invasion. It's Article 1, Section 10. This is an invasion. I'm going to engage the entire Texas military. We're going to solicit support from other states, and we're going to close it down. We're not enforcing immigration law. We're going to deport everybody that gets across that river back to the other side. Also, there's 25 crossings over the river. I'm stopping all inbound commercial traffic from Mexico. This is strategic. Make sure Mexico feels the economic pain. It's the only way we're going to have a secure border is Mexico cooperates. They're not getting anything into Texas until they secure their side, take it back from the cartels, and they can do that. They can do that. They got a good army. They can make it happen. Every road that leads to the bridges is a state road. You paid for it. We maintain it. We can unmaintain it. We can do whatever we want. I'm not worried about the federal government at all. I want the fight. I really do. I mean, look at the political optics of that. I'm Biden's worst nightmare. He's going to come down there and try to force us to open the border so we can get more fentanyl and sex trafficking in the United States of America. I don't think so. Patriots, I know you love renting your houses from the government, huh? I'm going to go fast on this. Yeah, everything you see out that when you're driving around today is owned by the government. Every bit of it. Every building, every piece of land, every ranch, every farm, every home, every business. It's all owned by the government. All you do is rent it from them. That's what property taxes is about. It's a terrible way to fund our government. You don't have any control over the rent. All you know is it's going to go up and up every year. You don't even have a lease on it. Doesn't matter if your business makes any money, of course. It doesn't matter anything about that. You're just still going to have to pay the government their cut, which is high. In most major metropolitan areas of Texas, the mortgage, about half the mortgage is property tax. We have the highest property tax in the metropolitan areas of the state in the nation. Overall, it's the sixth highest in the nation. It's a terrible way to fund government. It's a priority to get rid of it. I'm going to get it done. It's my legislative priority. It's actually Proposition 2 in the Republican primary ballot right now. I'll just tell you real briefly how we're going to get that done. I've got Excel spreadsheets all over the place. I've hired the best people to review it all. This is very doable. This is not political rhetoric. I'm not trying to get elected by telling you I'm going to eliminate property taxes. I'm already going to get elected. I'm here to tell you what I'm going to do and how we're going to do it. This is about your economic liberty. It's about the money you're going to save. It's about making sure that Texas is going to get swagger back, because every state has property tax. Almost every country has property tax. We're going to finally be the leader in something. I'm going to phase it out over 8 years. I'm going to cut state spending. I'm going to take 90% of the growth in state revenues, and we're going to buy down property tax. And it takes what's on a gradual path to zero. If you had to do it all in 1 year, it wouldn't be too possible. We're going to shift a lot over to sales tax, consumption tax. We already have a constitutional amendment. We're never going to have an income tax. But the most important part about my plan is you're going to get to vote on it. I want to make sure it's a constitutional amendment so you can weigh in on it. If you don't like the plan, you're not going to approve it. It's simple as that. So and we're going to keep local governments fully funded. We're replacing where the money comes from. We're not changing the funding formulas on anything else. So the cities will still get their share. If they're getting $50 million in, they'll always get $50 million in. It's just coming from the state instead of from property tax. The state of Texas got a lot of revenue buckets that we can do this. It's very doable. Confidence in the elections is important. It's a nonpartisan issue. It's the foundation of our constitutional republic. When that breaks, it's going to get really ugly, and it already has. I'm creating a new law enforcement division out of the Department of Public Safety. It's called Government Corruption and Election Integrity Division, and my plan right now is to have up to 500 officers in it, and that's what they're going to be focused on. They're not going to do murder, dope, or anything else. They're going to be focused on the election laws. We got a lot of laws, but nobody's enforcing them. Government corruption is very real. We got to make sure we got confidence in the elections. They're going to be familiar with where the ballots are, where the ballots are stored. They will be in Central County. They're going to be familiar with all election laws. Hopefully, we'll all go to paper ballots so everybody can have a trail where these elections are hard. But they're going to know the software. Who owns the software? Where the machines are. We're going to have a new court system so we can change venue. We're going to have a new prosecution system so we can get people convicted. And this is real. This is very doable. It's very achievable. Who are you going to call? Who are you going to call if you think your government's corrupt? If you think your county commissioners, your school board, whoever is corrupt, who are you calling? I've already tried that. You get a busy signal and nobody cares. They just don't. Well, that's going to this new division is going to give you somebody to call and take care of yourself and root out government corruption. But I've got a comprehensive solution to a lot of issues. I'll go faster. What about the cultural war? Our culture. We're losing it. We have 2, maybe 3 generations now of Texas children that have been educated without a moral foundation through our government school system. We lost Jesus in 1961 when they took prayer out of the schools. The next year they took the Bible out of schools. And that was the catalyst that started the sexual revolution. It was the catalyst that started abortion. It was the catalyst that had changed America from our Judeo-Christian faith.
That's right.
It's changed us. And when you replace that and you take Jesus out of the classrooms of our government schools, we've had Jesus in for 350 years, from 1630 when this country was first settled by the British and the Pilgrims came here. They came here for religious reasons. And we removed it all. What were they thinking? What they replace it with? Being an agnostic, modernity, humanism. That's what they replaced it with. Those are all religions.
That's right.
Those are just as real as being a Christian or Judeo-Christian faith. Well, it's not going. We can't keep going this way. We're graduating millions of Texans every year without the moral foundation that they must have to have a virtuous society. I plan on getting prayer back in every classroom in the state of Texas. I am not worried about the litigation. What's Biden going to do? Send the prayer police down and keep us from praying? I'll take that fight. I want that fight. I plan on getting biblical studies. It is a history lesson in all the middle schools, required for 2 years in the 7th and 8th grade. I plan on restoring our culture. And let me tell you where it starts. It starts the power of the governor. The governor has the power of appointments. The governor appoints hundreds of people to every board you can imagine, things you can never have heard of, river boards, all kinds of stuff. And what about Department of Education, TEA? That's appointed by the governor. Health and Human Services, appointed by the governor. Medical board, pharmacy board, real estate commission. But one we forget about a lot. The governor appoints the board of regents of every university and college in this state. Where do the teachers get trained? At the universities, at the colleges. Well, who's running the colleges and the universities in the state of Texas? Socialists, leftists. And that's where the poison starts, right there.
That's right. Yes.
Imagine if our universities were run by God-fearing patriots. People that believe in the exceptional and courageous patriots. People that believed in the exceptionalism of America and Texas and capitalism and the free markets. And they made sure they fired all the leftists that hate us and hate Jesus. They got to be courageous. But we can stop it. They've spread that poison all the way downstream. We've got, as you know, we've got pornography in our elementary school libraries. We've got transgender ideology being brainwashed all the way down, CRT, you name it. We've got drag queen story hour in our public libraries. I could go on and on. The bottom line is they're training people to hate us, to hate America, hate Texas, and to hate Christians. stop it. Patriots, I do get excited when I come to speak to groups like you because, you know, what we can do is we can make a difference. There is no cavalry coming over the hill, though. There's really not. You're the cavalry. Patriots, this is Texas. Everything is possible in Texas. We're going to be the tip of the spear for the nation. I'm going to prove not just to the country what it means for a state to be sovereign. I'm proving it to the whole world. I'm going to light up the lighthouse of liberty and freedom, and I'm going to blind those socialists. Help me cut to change the government. Help me restore our culture. Help me awaken the sheep from their slumber. The millions of sheep that are sleeping, help me awaken them so they too can help us restore the liberties that have been stolen from us. Awaken them to the power of what one individual can accomplish. Awaken them to the power of the free market, of capitalism. Awaken them to the power of Lord Jesus himself. This is our time, patriots. The time we've been waiting for. This is Texas. We will bend the knee to no man, to no government for no reason, because this is Texas. Our greatest days are coming. God bless you, and God bless you.